everybody, thanks for watching. This next pattern is Krystal Flash Blue Wing Olive from Dave Hughes, Essential Trout Flies. So I will explain the materials as I go and put the recipe in the description. So first off, I've got a size 16 barbless clink hammer or scud hook. You can use a light wire scud hook. Get that in your vise. I'm using olive 8/0 thread. Lay a base down well past the bend of the hook before we get the tail material in. You want the tail to come off at an angle. It is an angled type nymph. So for the tail, some olive colored ice dub. Just doesn't take much, just a little sliver there. And what I've been doing is just kind of rolling it a little bit, and then you can pull it out flat like that. It's hard to see with this blue background. See if you can see it down there in the darker blue. But just catch that in. Couple of wraps first. Take it back here. Well, check your position before you get it locked in too much. That's pretty well on top. You'll want to trim off the front piece of it. Now just pull this back. Put it a little bit straight, if you can see that. Ends up being just about 5 or 6 fibers, not too much. Just kind of a trailing shuck right there, you can see that. Now, for the body, just Krystal Flash. Depending on how thin yours is, this is pretty thin stuff. I am using about 4 strands here. So get that caught in right back here where we're going to start. Start the wraps. Kind of at the tail there. Okay, I think that'll be a good place to start it. Bring your thread back up. Maybe 2/3, maybe just a little farther ahead than 2/3. Go ahead and trim these pieces off. Now, to wrap this, I've been putting it in some hackle pliers here and giving it a spin. You can spin it with your fingers. I've been doing that a lot too, but the hackle pliers make it just a little bit easier to manipulate and to spin. So just wrap that up. You might need to spin it a few times along the way. It's not going to give you much segmentation, but it does give you that pearlescent multicolor body. A lot of olive in it, a little bit of blue and a little bit of red. So get that body wrapped up. You can put a little taper on it if you want. I've done a couple with the taper, but I think it looks just as good without it. So lock and wrap in front, and then let's get one more lock and wrap in back. If this stuff doesn't get really secured in, it will spin on you. So go ahead and trim these off. Now, do we need a couple more lock and wraps? Probably wouldn't hurt. So take this back. Several eye lengths. We've got 2 more components to put on. Now, one of the cool things about this pattern is you use some of the scrap that you don't use usually. So just a hen saddle feather hackle. Take some of this fluff off the bottom that you typically don't use and strip off. Take a little piece of that. Doesn't have to be a big piece. Now it can be long. We're going to trim it as one of the last steps. So hang your thread where you want the tie-in point to be. I'm going to go one more turn back. Lay that on right there. A pinch wrap in. One more. Well, that is okay. Now I've got 2 wraps on it right now. I'm going to check the position. I think that's going to be good. So let's lock that in. And then don't let it spin on you. If it does spin on you, it's still got time to get it back on top. That's pretty well situated on the top right there. Now we need to trim this leftover fluff up here. This is about the only tricky part of it. You don't want to leave too much of this. It'll make the head a little bit messier. But I think we're okay with that. We can bury some of these in here on our way back. So leave some room for your dubbed head, thorax I suppose. You can use superfine. I've used superfine or rabbit fur. I think the rabbit fur looks just a little bit better. Doesn't take much. That clump right there, that's probably about twice as much as I need. So let me pull that back. Got some wax on my thread. Kind of spread this out. And then make a pretty tight noodle here. Push it back up the top before we start wrapping this. And start your thin wraps right back there where your wing is. Kind of a bulbous looking head right there. I don't want it to get too close to my eye there, so be careful with that. Pull a little bit of that off. Go back one, maybe I can tighten that up. Okay, that's going to be fine right there. Now with the rabbit fur, it will be a little bit spiky. If you use regular, some kind of fine dubbing, you might want to pull some out. I've been using a dubbing brush just to pull a little bit more out, but I think that is going to look fine right there. Okay, just a couple of turns back to make some room for our whip finish. If you can get 4 or 5 turns on here, that's pretty good. I've been getting about 4 on it. It gives me enough room for just the tiniest drop of head cement here. So pull that tight, poke my scissors up into it. Now the last thing we do for this guy is trim that wing. Now you kind of want it to be straight up about midway through that body. So what you do, just pull it tight, rest your scissors right here, and then you might have to angle them in just a little. There we go. Got a couple up there on the top that didn't want to cut, so we'll try to trim those a little bit. And that's going to be fine. So Dave Hughes, Krystal Flash BWO Olive. Great midge pattern, or a nymph pattern, kind of a merger. I put this in the test tank. I'll try to show that video in a minute of the underwater. It's a very lightweight fly, so it moves around a lot in the current. You get a little bit of movement with this, not a whole lot. That mainly just gives it a profile. So there you have it, folks. If you've watched this far, I appreciate it. I hope you will consider subscribing. And if you enjoyed it, click the thumbs up. Thanks again, everybody.